You're grinding every day. Long hours, no backup, no accountability. That ends now. The Empower Solopreneur Mastermind gives you one simple advantage, a weekly power session that turns isolation into domination. Every Friday morning on Zoom, you'll get real coaching and real feedback to make real moves. Join a group of driven professionals in a program designed for solopreneurs and people working at home. Stop getting stuck. Start scaling. Seats are limited. Lock in yours today at modernobserver.com/empower-mastermind.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And I look at two huge events this week, but we'll take the first, and that is the ongoing protest/civil war. That I think civil war is really not so inappropriate at this point. You have what's becoming increasingly paid protesters, more radicalized left. But I'll hand it off to you. Your thoughts.
Yeah, what's going on in Minnesota, and unfortunately, it's starting to spread across the country, is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this since the early 70s or so. And
Correct.
we've got actually three different sections of this. I don't even want to call it a protest because they're not protesting. Protesters don't attack police. Protesters don't vandalize, property. But we've got several segments. One is these folks are being paid, and there has been evidence uncovered. It's starting to be reported that organizations had folks mobilized before any incidents happened. They actually encouraged these folks to interfere with ICE, which is what led to the two recent deaths, which, I'm not minimizing the two victims, but they were set up to be in a place and do things that they could be killed because this group wants martyrs. And these folks are being
but
paid.
Don't they also want an overthrow of our society/government? I mean, it happened in the summer of love, 2020, George Floyd. It's a paid insurrection.
I don't think this group wants an overthrow of the government. I think they simply want to seize control of it. They want to do this, as we saw in 2020, to affect, in this case, the midterms. In that case, it was the presidential election. I think that's what the people behind the paychecks are aiming for. They're looking to shift the electorate so that their candidates can get back in office and they can go back to funneling slush funds to these people. Then you've got
Yes, go ahead.
Then you've got the second group. And the second group are true radicals. These guys want to overthrow our existing system. They don't want the government operating the way it does now. They don't want capitalism. And this is a truly dangerous group because they're idealists and they have no idea what they're talking about. And the Democrats have been egging them on, and we've just seen just this week that they are losing control of this group. This group has not only attacked ICE, these are the folks that that stalk ICE in their off hours, went to churches, attacked hotels because there were ICE people staying there. But this group in the last week attacked Tim Walz and attacked Ilhan Omar, claiming they're not doing enough Well, excuse me, there
Yep.
I mean, at that point, you've lost control of the radicals, and this has now become a dangerous group.
Okay, here's my assessment, dovetailing on what you've just articulated. And that is, yes, you have a core of radicals, but you also have an increasing number and force in the Democratic Party of, let's say, radical lights, like Chris Murphy. You can have a whole list. And are they out in the street? Are they burning cars? No, none of that. But they are voicing support to all of this. And I think it presents a real problem for the Democratic Party.
Well, it's more than, as you said, radical light. These folks, I don't believe these folks are radicals. I don't think they have any beliefs whatsoever. I think they bend whichever way they think the wind is blowing so that they can try to get votes. But this week, they have actually shown that they don't care about the American people because they are so focused on cracking down on ICE. They are now threatening to shut the government down on Friday by not passing funding bills. So that, again, once again, they're not getting their way. So they're going to put the American people in front of the bus and run us over.
Okay, here's the key questions for the doctor. We can go over the nuances about the protests and so on and so forth. I think that's ad nauseum in the media. The two quintessential questions are the effect on the midterms. That's our first question. And what do you think on that?
The effect on the midterms is still up in the air. It's going to depend on how Trump responds. If Trump continues to respond the way he has, it's going to cost the Republicans in the midterms. He needs to be
In what
strong.
way? In what way? What is he doing wrong?
Mostly what he's doing wrong is he's focusing in the wrong places. He needs to be out there talking about what has been accomplished over the last year. He also needs to say, yes, it was bad that these two American citizens were killed. We we need to do a strong investigation to see exactly what was wrong. Quite frankly, today the two ICE agents that were involved in the weekend's shooting have been suspended. That is the right thing to do because they should not still be on duty while the investigation is going on. He also needs to focus his message. Stop diverting people by talking about Greenland. He actually had a call with Tim Walz. I don't remember if it was Monday or yesterday. But the reason for this call was that Tim Walz asked for help. This needs to be all over the place. Why is everybody not talking about the fact that Tim Walz has reached out to the president and said, yes, this is out of control. We need help. This happened not too long, apparently, after Walz was attacked by that rogue mob. He's starting to realize they've lost control. So Trump needs to
I
focus. He has been, unfortunately, over the last 2 weeks, reverting back to term one Trump, where he could screw things up in a moment's notice.
I actually disagree with that to some degree. Yes, has he handled it cleanly? No, a lot of mistakes. I think one mistake who's ever Christy Nome, just get rid of her, okay, and other people screwing around too much. Okay, let's get this thing done. You're not going to make any friends, so realize that, and let's get it done and let's get it over with. Okay, but he's also facing an almost insurmountable situation in places like the Twin Cities, where you have a mob that's feeding on this. They're paid protesters, yada, yada, yada. I think it's almost an unwinnable situation. It's kind of like, it's not to this degree, but almost like the Vietnam War when you had Johnson with the Great Society and all these amazingly so-called great things, but everyone was focused on Vietnam. Maybe a bad analogy, but people don't like ugliness. Um, I think that I think one of the keys is public opinion. It's still somewhat in his favor. Um, I do think he is in a difficult situation, and I think he needs to get it over with as soon as possible.
He
The
needs
more it
to.
drags out. And one other thing I want your opinion on, so our listeners do. I'm not a big fan of Pam Bondi. All show, no go. Let's get to the money. You're telling me the United States of America and all the apparatchik that we have can't get to the money trail. When? How do you like this fact? Or not fact, this insight. When and if the money trail is exposed and has been screwing around this forever, then it all blows up in the hard radical left's face. If they can prove and lay out how this stuff is getting funded, it blows up 100%. The whole idea of a grassroots, insurrection, whatever you want to call it, looking at the immorality of all this, blows up. What's your thought about the money trail and about Pam Bondi? This is not the first thing she screwed up. She needs to go too. Do you think, the first question is, do you think if and when the money trail is uncovered, for lack of a better word, has shown the light of the day, that this thing blows up?
Yes, I think it's not just one money trail. They've got to follow two money trails. Because let's face it, a lot of this, the reason that this is focused on Minnesota and the reason the Minnesota politicians, in fact, Minneapolis's mayor just said today, they will not enforce federal law. Okay, now, first of all, that's illegal. So, they don't care about the law. But the whole reason this is happening in Minnesota is because they were trying to distract everybody from the fraud that was going on there. So they need to nail everybody involved in the Minnesota fraud. They need to find who is paying the protesters, nail down that money trail. They need to do both of them, and they need to get the word out. And third, this is something else that you didn't touch on. I think, and yes, I have no problem with Pam Bondi going clean,
Goodbye.
clean house. He's sending Tom Homan to take over in Minnesota. That's a good thing. And let's face it, he's cleaned up stuff like this before and got an award from Obama for doing so. So
Yes.
Homan is a good man to be putting in there. I think, however, they're not learning the lesson of misdirection. That's how all of this started, was they wanted to misdirect folks away from the Minnesota fraud. Well, how do you pull back on this without looking weak on immigration? Well, I think it's a fairly simple answer. You take a page from the Democratic playbook on misdirection. Leave the ICE soldiers in place. Let them stand in front of government buildings. Let them call attention to themselves. And meanwhile, send in the FBI to arrest the people you were there to arrest in the first place.
Not a bad scenario. I would not argue with that in any way. But and I think another thing you talk about, yeah, it's a way to deflect from the corruption. I 100% agree with that. But I also think the Democrats were a month ago shitting in their pants because Trump was just kicking ass at rhymes. But and I think that was also one of the reasons, because there's nothing more ingrained to the modern democratic mind, and that is holding on to power at any cost.
Yes, this is
Blowing up
why
the city's fund.
this is why it was so important that Trump won the election in last in 2024, because, and this is not me saying this is Joe Manchin saying, the Democrats were absolutely power hungry and they would do whatever it took to maintain power, and that is what they're doing now.
Okay, no. So before we leave this subject, two other points, and the point is, What troubles me is I believe we're from 2020 on, we've been left, or the United States has inherited a hard, far left that's not going away. And you have hold on, you have Democratic sympathizers that are helping enable by not calling this out. So, and they're increasingly becoming radicalized. Your thoughts?
I think what we're seeing now is actually the culmination of 50 years of calculation. This goes back to the 70s with rules for radicals, and was it Noam Chomsky, who's still talking at colleges recruiting radicals. And the fact of the matter is, he was wrong then, he's wrong now, but his system was absolutely correct. And it's showing up now. They have ingrained people, and these folks have absolutely no idea of what they're actually asking for with socialism and communism. And the only tool in Trump's toolkit that is going to turn the tide against this is pulling back tariffs, pulling back regulation, getting the economy firing on all thrusters, and he's only got a few months to do it. Because if the economy starts booming, we started seeing the beginning of it with the heightened GDP, but we've still got a weak job market. Inflation is still higher than we'd want. He's got to unleash everything he's got to allow business to fix the economy quickly, because that's the key. And it's the one thing the Democrats have never understood. Government cannot build an economy. They can destroy one and they can get in the way of it being built. But it's only the private sector that can build an economy. Trump knows this. He's got to get government out of the way.
I would agree. Yeah, and to your point, I think actually the Democrats really have no conception of what the private enterprise is, which was not always the case. But before we leave Minnesota, Omar, the distinguished congressperson, what do you think is going to be her fate? Because, just like, well, Pelosi at least started with somewhat of a nest egg. She went from 30 grand, which is essentially nothing in her total net worth, to even if it's 15 million, that is literally impossible. Impossible.
Yeah,
Impossible.
there's very obviously insider trading going on here, because Ilhan Omar's husband, brother, whatever it is you want to call him, has a hedge fund. In 2023, this hedge fund had less than $5 to its name. And now it has 20 million in its coffers. You don't get
I
this
think it's
without
not only.
influence.
Wait, I think it's not.
You don't get this without influence peddling, and you don't get this without insider trading.
Okay, I think it's beyond insider trading. Even if you had insider trading, it's impossible to grow from 10,000 to 20 million. Absolutely, it's impossible.
No,
It's
that's why
also, I
that's
think,
why
part
I
of
said
the.
that's why I said you have to have influence peddling as part of it.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. What's going to be her fate? Because they've been screwing around with her forever. Okay, that is Trump and his minions. Let's pull the trigger. Okay, same with this whole Pam Bondi thing. It ain't difficult. You don't have to be a genius. Let's get to the root of the matter and send her packing, either out of Congress or out of the country.
We need full-fledged investigations. We need hard, cold facts that no media shill, no social media influencer is going to be able to argue with. And until they can deliver those facts, and I'm more and more convinced that Pam Bondi is not the person to deliver those facts.
No way.
But until we get those, and don't this goes back to what I was saying about Trump focusing in the wrong places. You don't say, "Oh, we can't reveal this because it's an ongoing investigation." No, you make the facts clear to the American public. You try them in the court of public opinion at the same time you're trying them in a court of law.
100%. And that's why I'm very disappointed with his chief of staff, who was crushing it during the campaign. Yeah, she's got to, let's get it in gear, okay? Last topic is Iran on the brink. Your thoughts, first of all, should we get involved? Will we get involved? Let's take those 2 points first. Should we and will we?
Okay. Should we? Yes. We actually have
Yes.
to. We really
Agreed.
do not have a choice. And for anybody that does not understand why we do not have a choice, take a look at the Taliban. We abandoned them after we helped them get rid of Russia, and they turned on us. We have to show the Iranian people that we stand with them. Otherwise, it's going to become another hotbed of terrorism, and it's just kicking the problem down the road. We have to support them. If we can bomb, I don't want to see boots on the ground. But quite frankly, I don't think we need to put boots on the ground. We need to choke off their finances. We need to bomb their nuclear facilities back to the Stone Age. And I'm not just talking about the one big one. We need to take out everything that they can use. We need to get resources to the Iranian people. I'm talking about getting Starlink access to them, which has started because the Iranian government has cut off phone, internet. There's almost a complete blackout. We need to get them the tools to get through that blackout. We need to be sneaking food and medical supplies to them.
To your point about hitting them, I think, yes, you're 100%. There's not even any reason to debate that. I think just by hitting them in various ways, at least sends a signal to the Iranian people we're behind them, unlike Obama. In other words, if we let them down again and just pull the plug, your analysis is 100% correct. You're going to get a de-evolution of their society and economy, which is going to lead to basically a situation where there's a huge uncertainty and vacuum of power, and you know what happens when you have a vacuum of power.
Right.
The next question is, will we?
I honestly think we will. I don't think the Abraham Lincoln has moved into the Middle East as part of a bluff. We've got the carrier group there. They arrived 2 days ago. They are, they're not exactly in position yet where they can strike, but they're only, I believe, about 10 hours out.
Yeah, so I think I've heard several analysis, and you're 100% correct. I mean, could they pull back? Yes, but you don't send. Listen, I hate to be so cold, but committing all that kind of resources, financial, the list goes on, and then pulling back makes you look ridiculous. So very few times in history, military history, do you amass such force and say, "Oh, okay, have a nice day."
If you're sending that level of military force into a situation, they're ready to act. They don't go, "Oh, you're just going to fly the flag." No, they are prepared to act. I think they will, but I think they will hold them in reserve until there's no other choice. And I think that's actually the right thing to do at this point. We need to give the Iranian people all of the resources for them to take care of this on their own. We need to give them full support.
Agreed.
But we only step in militarily if there's no other option.
Agreed. Well, a lot going on in the news, and Hopefully, people are voicing their opinions on our social media, on our website, and certainly they can be part of the conversation, can't they, Dr. Lopkin?
Yes, let's hear what you have to say. Go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Radio at the Carnivore Radio website, xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.